What is the name of this message today? What is the title? Can we walk together? Can we walk together? Think of this title from two ways, okay? Two ways of looking at it. Let's take our way for first of all. You are talking to God. You are in your prayer closet or on your floor, and you're saying you feel low in a place far away from God, and you want to be with Him. So you ask, can we walk together? But okay, for a moment, let's put ourselves, if we can, in God's shoes, if I may be so audacity. But let's try to think of it that way. From above, looking down at you and me. As He's looking at all of mankind, His creation. And all the people are contrary to Him. What must He be saying to everybody? Can we walk together? What would it take for us to walk together? And isn't this a question that haunts us, that haunts God? You know, go to John 17. John 17. John 17, we traditionally read this at the Passover night. We read John 17 because it's a prayer Jesus was giving to God in His moment before He was going to be crucified. And in His prayer time with God, He was asking God. We'll look at verse 11. It says, now I am no longer in the world. I am no longer in the world. But these are in the world. And I come to you, Holy Father. Keep through your name those whom you have given me, that we may be one that they may be one as we are. Can we walk together? Isn't that what He was hoping for? Isn't that what He was asking about? But at that time, it was more for a local establishment at the moment, because it's the Passover. It's more of a localized application then. But look at what He says in verse 21 and 23. We'll go through these verses, 21 to 23. Breaking into a sentence here. Well, let's read verse 20. It says, I do not pray for these alone, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. There would be a work going on. That they all may be one, as you, Father, are in me. That they all, could that be not just that local time? Could they all be one? That, Father, you and me and I and you, and they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. And the glory which you gave me, I have given them, that they may be one just as we are one. And I and them, and you and me, that they may be perfect in one, that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. Let that sink in, brethren. What are the stages of God's working with all of mankind? We know that He's developed a relationship with man in segments or in stages. But what has prevented us walking together? That was the intention from the beginning, was to walk together. What got in the way? What interrupted all of this from happening? All you need to do is go back to Genesis chapter 2, Genesis chapter 3. Adam and Eve were made. They had a great relationship with God for however long it lasted, until someone stepped in the way. Oh, you won't surely die. And lied to them and convinced Eve to take of this fruit. Oh, but you won't surely die. God didn't tell you the truth. And then Adam bought into it, and away they went. And so men and women have been contrary to God, and they were not walking together any longer. Not that they were. Perhaps they walked together, they and God, the three of them, for a little while, however long, we don't know. A day, a week, I don't know. We don't know, it doesn't say. But for however long, it didn't last. It was over. But Jesus was talking there in John 17, we record, how he was looking forward to a time when it would be reestablished. The oneness would be reestablished. And it had to be taking stages along the way for this to happen for all of mankind. But at first, it wasn't for everybody. But a priesthood was established, brethren. A priesthood was established in the early days of Israel. We rehearsed the story of Israel during the days of unleavened bread. We rehearsed the time when they were released from Egypt. Egypt is a type of sin. Sin is what the world is immersed in. We live in sin. The world is so living and overcome with sin, we just swim in it. We don't even know we're in it. It's so profound and so part of us. We resist anybody who would try to remove us from it. The ideal, we love being in this stuff. Apparently, man does. But God intervened, and he set up a priesthood. We're not going to go into all the priesthood today, but the priesthood was established. We go back to book of Exodus, you see, and he established the tabernacle. But let's go, the Levitical priesthood was established, and among that priesthood he talked about a time of holy days. Let's go back through and review the law of why we're here and what the command is for us to be here, for any people to serve this particular day. What is the Day of Atonement? Why does it exist? And so if you'll go to Leviticus 23, let's go back to the basics, go back to the beginning of where this began and why we're here. Establish the law. And we're going to go to Leviticus 23, verse 26. It says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, verse 27, also the 10th day of this 7th month shall be the Day of Atonement. It shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. And you shall do no work on that same day, for it is the Day of Atonement, to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. For any person who is not afflicted of soul on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any person who does any work on that same day, that person I will destroy from among his people. Pretty serious. You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. It shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest, and you shall afflict your souls. On the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. So there's a definition. We use that verse to define when these Sabbaths begin and end, at even, from even to even. But this particular set of days is very important. There are two key words I'd like to focus in on this particular set of verses. If you go through there, what do you see? What word continues to be repeated? The word atonement. Atonement, it shall be a holy convocation. Day, in verse 28, atonement, a day of atonement. You know, it's this day of an atonement. What is it? In good old Strong's number 3725, you see the word Kippur. What does this word Kippur mean? It's to cover sin. Remember we said with the Adam and Eve incident where sin was introduced into the world, something had to come to atone, to cover that sin, to cover it and to disannul it. There's another word that I looked up that comes from this, an expiation. It's in Strong's, this word, an expiation, to make amends for. The expiation means to make amends for a wrong, a sin, etc. If you break down the word expiation, it has ex. E-X means completely. And then Pierre, appease, to satisfy a need, to make calm, to make quiet, to settle this issue. To remove the sin, to cover it, to stop it from having an effect on man is paramount. It continues every day. Every day. We live in it now. We just drove here through it. It's just immense, a part of man. But the atonement is to cover this. God's will is that it be removed, that it be solved. Then the other word that appears in this series of verses is the word afflict. Verse 27, you shall afflict your souls. And then in verse 29, who is not afflicted. And then down again, let's see, verse 32, you shall afflict your souls. What does this word afflict mean? During the time when I have been preparing this message, we've been preparing this message. I shouldn't say I, because I didn't do it alone. But Bill always thought, if you would explain, if you had asked me for an explanation about affliction previously, up until maybe a week or so ago, I would have said, well, afflict means fast. And so I was doing research into this study for this particular message. And I reread that and I looked up the word afflict. It doesn't say fast. No, it isn't. Fast is not the definition of the word afflict. What is the definition of the word afflict? It's Strong's number 6031, anah. A-N-A-H, anah. What does that mean? It's a prime root. It's to be afflicted, bowed down, to be humbled, to be meek, to be looking down, abase the self, to be humbled, to be humble of the self. Afflicting is this attitude we take on of a quietness here in this time, to amend, to grow in a relationship with God. Do you see the need, brethren, that what we talked about so far was being removed from Him, being separated from Him? Can we walk together? Was the original question. How can man work together? How can we walk together with God? So the Day of Atonement had a great significance. in Israel's wanderings when the tabernacle was established. There was a time during the Exodus when a tabernacle was established. Exodus 30 tells us of something. Exodus 30. Exodus 30 and verse 10 tells us of Aaron. Aaron was the high priest. Remember, Aaron was Moses' brother. He was established to be a priest, a high priest. And Aaron shall make atonement upon its horns once a year with the blood of the sin offering of atonement. Once a year he shall make atonement upon it throughout your generations. It is most holy to the Lord. Israel was in a process of sinning against God. The people of Israel needed to be reconciled with God continually. Before the grand salvation was to come through Jesus, in the meantime, there was this temporary dwelling, this temporary tabernacle was established in the wilderness for the children of Israel to be represented before God. The priest is a representative to go to God. Once a year, he was to go in there. Once a year on the Day of Atonement, to go into what was called the Holy of Holies. I'm not going to go into a big explanation of the tabernacle just now, but to suffice to say that the relationship between man and God had to be atoned, had to be treated with a relationship, some way of connecting back with God. And the priest was meant to do that for them. And so he did. But how did the term fasting get involved? How did we come to the idea of fasting? Fasting is connected to the whole thing because it has to do with this idea of being humbled and meek and afflicted. That word afflicted comes along. So there's a reference to Psalm 35. Psalm 35. In our booklet that we have, it tells about this holy day. And in Psalm 35, it tells about there's these series of verses we're going to go through to help us connect back with the idea of fasting in relation to afflicting. So, Psalm 35 and verse 13, it says, "But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled myself with fasting, and my prayer would return to my own heart." Do you see the need, brethren? To humble with fasting. Fasting was a part of being afflicted, being brought down, being to a place of seeking for an appeasement, to go before God. What do you do when you go before God, brethren? If you go to Isaiah chapter 58, Isaiah 58 is one of our key places to go when we want to know about fastings. And Isaiah 58 and verse 3 tells of brethren were fasting back then, different ones were, and they thought by their fastings that they were going to gain some access to God. This is one of the problems with fasting, the brethren, for people when they think they're going to do something to get God to do something for them. But that's not the right reason to be fasting. You don't do it to get something from God. You fast in order to afflict yourself, to present your God to present yourself to God in a way that's humble and correct, so that He'll listen to you, so that He'll hear you. And in verse 3 of 58, he says, why have we fasted? They said, why have we fasted, but you didn't see? Why have we afflicted our souls, and you didn't take any notice? In fact, here he's answered. In fact, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exploit all your laborers. Indeed, you fast for strife and debate, and to strike with the fist of wickedness. Verse 4. And you will not fast as you do this day, to make your voice on high. But here in verse 5, he's coming to what he's looking for. Is it a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head like a bulrush, and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Would you call this a fast, an acceptable day of the Lord? Now here, is not this the fast I have chosen, God says, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, that you will break every yoke? Isn't that the reason for fasting? So that other people would benefit from it. Everybody's supposed to benefit from this fasting. It's an outgoing, it's an expression of love. The greatest love is the give up of ourselves. That's what we're doing now. We're going to get to that in a moment in this message. So, in Ezra chapter 8, go back to the book of Ezra. Ezra chapter 8, verse 21 to 23. Ezra chapter 8, verse 21. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river of Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God, to seek from him the right way for us. Catch that. That we might seek the right way for us and our little ones and all our possessions. For I was ashamed to request of the king an escort of soldiers and horsemen to help us against the enemy of the road, because we had spoken to the king, saying, the hand of our God is upon us, for all good to seek him. But his power and his wrath are against all those who forsake him. So we fasted and entreated our God for this, and he answered our prayer. We didn't want to just assume that God was going to be with us. We didn't want to make a presumption. We want to make sure that he's with us. And we're with him. Can we walk together? What's going to cause us to walk together? This disruption, this interruption, this separation, this division that's between us that was established back at creation has to be resolved. Must be. And in Esther 4, verse 16, we don't get to go to the book of Esther very often, but we can go to the book of Esther today. That's it's worth our while to read the book of Esther now and then. But if you can find Esther, it comes after Nehemiah. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. E-N-E. Verse 16. Esther is told by Mordecai, her uncle, go, gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan, and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so will I go to the king, which is against the law. She's not allowed to go before the king. But she's fasting, beseeching God. And she says, if I perish, I perish. So be it. But I'm going to God. I have to go for my people. There is a benefit in place for everyone. So there's an inquiry of God, making an inquiry for him. We are making an inquiry for him today. Little do we realize, brethren, we're in this for the rest of the world. We're here for their benefits. But let's go back to another word for fast while we're on the subject of fasting. For a quick reference, it's in Acts 27. Acts chapter 27 and verse 9. This is a famous story when Paul was being taken across by sea. And there's a reference here in verse 9 to a time. It says, now when much time had been spent, and sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was already over, that is, it was past, Paul advised them, saying, men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster, and much loss, not only for the cargo and ship, but also for our lives. So the fast was had already taken place for them. And that's Strong's 35:22 in the Greek. It's nestuo, meaning to abstain, meaning of fasting, abstaining. There was another word, a Hebrew word, called tsum. It's pronounced tsum. T-S-U-W-M is how you would spell it if you were to spell out the Hebrew. It's pronounced tsum. And it's to cover. Guess what you cover this time? The Day of Atonement is to cover sin. But this is not about covering sin. It's to cover your mouth so you won't eat anything. By the way, wouldn't you know, when you talk about fasting, we like to tease about how hamburgers and everything smells so good. Well, where I live, it's within shouting distance of a brewery. The Walking Tree Brewery is right within shouting distance from my house. And their building is right over there. Well, every now and then you can smell when they're brewing up a big batch of hops and whatever else they're brewing up, because today it was really strong. And I went over to get my mail, which is across the street, go over there, and oh, the fragrance is fantastic. You could almost swim in it. It's so profound, that fragrance. And wouldn't you know, it would be on this day that they would choose to do and pump it out into the air so that Bill can smell it. It's all a torture Bill, you know. Not really, but anyway, it was just funny how that happened. Anyway, so we cover this territory of trying to understand this holy day. Why are we here? What is it about? And how does it connect with afflicting, atoning, and fasting? That's what we're doing. But let's go back to another aspect of this day, which Jeff was attuning to. He was alluding, that's the word, alluding to. He was alluding to what was happening, we see in Leviticus chapter 16. Because there's another big aspect of this day that has to take place. In Leviticus chapter 16, we'll go back through this psalm, and we'll look at verse 2 to 10. Remember, we talked about Aaron, how Aaron was established to be an intercessor, to be a high priest. And let's look at verse 2 to 10 to set the stage. It says, and the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron your brother not to come at simply any time into the holy place, inside the veil. We read about that in Exodus chapter 30. But he wasn't to come in there just any time, before the mercy seat which is on the ark, lest he die. For I will appear in the cloud above the mercy seat. Thus Aaron shall come into the holy place with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering and of a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on holy linen tunic and the linen trousers on his body. He shall be girded with a linen sash, and with the linen turban he shall be attired. These are holy garments. Therefore he shall wash his body in water and put them on. He shall take from the congregation of the children of Israel 2 kids of the goats as a sin offering, and 1 ram as a burnt offering. Aaron shall offer for the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord and the other lot for the scapegoat, or the azazel in the Hebrew. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell, and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord, to make atonement upon it, and to let it go as the scapegoat into the wilderness. So that's up to verse 10. Something is happening here, brethren. Something big is happening. I want you to pay attention to something we said at the beginning. We talked about the Passover and the time of Jesus' prayer to God, John chapter 17. And we saw that the Passover time was a time for his called ones, the ones he would call, to be reconciled to God, to have their sins covered. But something else is happening here in Leviticus 16, because the sin that's being covered wasn't only for individuals in this case. Here, we see in verse 15 to 19, verse 15 to 19 of Leviticus 16. It says, verse 15, then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people. Bring its blood inside the veil, do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. So he shall make atonement for the holy place, because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions, for all their sins, and so shall he do for the tabernacle of meeting, which remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. There shall be no man in the tabernacle of meeting when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place, until he comes out, that he may make atonement for himself and for his household and for all the congregation of Israel. And he shall go out to the altar that is before the Lord, and make atonement for it. Shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar all around. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood upon it with his finger 7 times, cleanse it and sanctify it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. Do you see that there's something bigger than just, not that the Passover is small by any means, but it was meant for a select or a smaller group of people. But this time, it's for all Israel, for the sins of Israel. And we know from if you do other parts of the study in the scriptures, oftentimes when it's talking about Israel, there's a greater emphasis. It's a representation of the rest of mankind. All of mankind needs to be covered. All of mankind needs to have their sins reduced and removed. all of it. If you go to Hebrews chapter 9, Hebrews 9, we see of Jesus going into this tabernacle, if you will. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11. But Christ came as high priest. Aaron was only a type of Jesus, what Jesus would become. But Jesus was the actual high priest who would go in. Jesus came as high priest, the Christ, of the good things to come, for with the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands. It wasn't a temporary one like it was in Numbers or Exodus. That is, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood. He entered the most holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats and ashes of an heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? For this reason he is the mediator of the new covenant, by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, that those who are called may receive the promise of eternal inheritance. There are those who are called, yes, at that time, but the rest of mankind needs to have their lives covered as well. The covering of sin, the amending of the division that was between man and God. We go back to Leviticus 16 again. Leviticus 16, verses 20 to 22. I already read that. Sorry about that. But we're talking about that scapegoat. The scapegoat, the one who has the responsibility and the blame placed upon him. The expiation, the completely remove of all that wickedness. Jeff Newell already gave us a great illustration of, and we live in it every day. You know, again, I've mentioned to you many times, it gets personal. You all know people who have died of cancer. My own sisters died of cancer. Cancer is one of the effects of men's sins, isn't it? When people do whatever they do to produce things for economic gain, more so than people's health, when there's governments of this world reusing people, killing people, putting thousands, millions of people to death because of their own ideology for some man who thinks he's going to rule the world and make the world follow his own way. How many lives have been lost in the history of man? It's death and sorrow and pain and agony of millions and millions of people. It's more than we can bear. Who is responsible for this sin? Who's the one who introduced sin to begin with? And all that has to be put on him. And it was put on him, the one that we spoke of, that he talked about, that instigator, that accuser of the brethren. It's a fantastic time. Verse 20 of Leviticus 16 said, "And when he has made an end of atoning for the holy place, and the altar he shall bring the live goat, and Aaron shall lay both his hands on the goat, the head of the live goat, and confess over it all the iniquities of man," what says the children of Israel. and all their transgressions concerning all their sins, putting them on the head of the goat, and he shall send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a suitable man. The fit man, the one who's capable. Jeff introduced that idea that he's a created being. God as creator is greater and more powerful and can take care of this need, to remove it finally from mankind and remove this one who is responsible for it all. And Revelation 20, verse 1 to 3, told us the story of Revelation 20, verse 1. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. There was an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit. And he laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should not deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while. You question, why was he released? Perhaps it's a time to reevaluate those who have lived. It's occurring to me in this series of study that I've done in preparation for this message. I didn't understand that the time of our at-one-ment with Jesus, I assumed previously that we all were going to be at one, brought to become at one with Jesus on the Day of Atonement. And the other day, I was going to write it out. I was going to illustrate for you something that was made at one, to describe the idea of making something at one. And I was sitting there thinking, no, that's not right, Bill. That's not right. We're already at one. The brethren, the ones who are the first fruits, will already be at one on the day of trumpets. When we're raised, the saints of God will be raised incorruptible. 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 4. They'll be raised incorruptible, and the marriage of the Lamb will have come. Feast of Trumpets, that's already occurred. This is not for that. The atonement is yet to be made. For who? Who's left? Oh, the rest of everybody else. And what I mentioned earlier about the fasting, we're fasting when we read, go back to it, brethren. Go back to Isaiah 58 and verse 5. Isaiah 58 and verse 5. Go back to that again. Whoops. As it is a fast, this is Isaiah 58 verse 5. Is it a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head like a bulrush and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Would you call this a fast, an acceptable day of the Lord? Now here you go, verse 6. Is this not the fast I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, that you may break every yoke. Who has put on us this wickedness? Where did the wickedness come from? Where did the heavy burdens come from? Oh, we're all living under heavy. The whole world is living under heavy burdens. They can't get out from under the burdens. To let the oppressed go free. To break every yoke. God will break every yoke. That guy that's making it all happen will be removed. So when we're fasting, brother, we are fasting. We are giving up our life. Why? Do you realize, it just came to me, I realized we're doing this for them. We will have already been, the saints will already be with Christ. This is a future time. This is for the rest of the world. This is a day of love, the greatest love we can give. God's greatest love for man is to help all of them be free of the wicked one, to be free of that which is burdening them, to release them from this captivity and burden that they bear. And once that's done, remove the guy that's responsible for it, oppressing everybody, then what happens? Hallelujah! We go to the Feast of Tabernacles. So let's be on our way, brethren. A fabulous thing, a fabulous gift of what we're about to partake of.